Welcome to the Ask Me How I Know show. I'm your host, Julie Holly, and I'm so excited you're here. Ask Me How I Know is the only podcast in the multifamily niche replicating what takes place outside the walls of a seminar. Remember when we used to get together like that? This is like the lobby where honest, unscripted conversations take place and transformation happens. We'll talk about practical problem solving in the multifamily niche as well as overcoming mental roadblocks. This episode is brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. 3 Keys Investments is dedicated to helping people like you, you, enter the multifamily investment space to build passive income and legacy wealth. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed Ask Me How I Know, I'd be honored if you did. Thanks so much for joining me today, and now for our featured guest. Welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. I am so excited for our guest. I'm always excited about the guests that I have because I have the most exceptional guests, but this guest in particular, and you don't know this, played a significant role. But first, I should welcome you to Ask Me How I Know. So Gino, welcome to my show.
Julie, thank you for having me on.
It's super fun. I also have another thanks, and that is a shout out to Joshua Rusin, who connected us. And I'm so grateful. He's cheered me on and cheered on my show and just has been a very positive voice. And I appreciate that. And he connected me with you. He said, hey, would you be interested? I'm like, are you kidding me? So Gino, I did not tell you this pre-show because I'm like, I don't want to be redundant, right?
That's the seek to serve mentality. That's what Josh envisions, and that's what we try to do with Jake and Gino, because it's amazing. You step out of your comfort zone, you help somebody out, and that person gets helped out, and then just the whole, it just keeps continue to perpetuate itself. So I love that about Josh.
And it does. So here's a tidbit, and I don't know if I share this with Josh or not, but I need to share this with you. So the Jake and Gino Wheelbarrow Profits was actually like this huge support to me and my investment journey. And it was a show that, I mean, I still listen to it, but there's so many podcasts out there. It's so great. But what happened when I was listening to your show and your story of the restaurant, and you mentioned that as we were talking beforehand, and just how you guys were working together, how that came about, how your podcast came about, gave me the confidence to start my podcast. So
stepping out of the comfort zone, right? That's awesome.
Out of the comfort zone and saying it might not be perfect. We're going for it though.
Yes. Well, it's really, Julie, it's all about committing and then figuring it out, right? It's that we're going to get into limiting beliefs, but I think if the most successful people in the world, they don't really have it figured out. Everyone seems like they do. Instagram may make you feel like you're the dumbest person. Facebook, you start reading everyone else's posts. Why is everyone so successful? I'm here to tell you that we are all out there winging it and figuring it out. That's the reality. So if you're out there saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, let me tell you something. A lot of people feel the same way you do. There's just some of those that have more courage. And I think it comes from a place of some people are fearful. And when you're fearful, you don't take action. That's one of the things I think that's been going on with this pandemic. A lot of us are afraid. We're fearful. The difference between people taking action, I think they take it from a level of fear that I had at the restaurant. What am I going to do? I have a successful little business. I have 6 kids. I have 8 mouths to feed, to a place of anger where I actually got angry with my situation. And my anger brought me to action, right? And if I didn't have that anger, it's from a level of being catabolic, right? You're negative, draining, to one of anabolic, where you're positive. And that's where you start thinking of solutions. My anger made me take action, made me go out and seek a partner, made me go out and seek a mentor. I know there's something better. If I was fearful and I stayed in that corner and I didn't take action, I didn't get out of my comfort zone, I'd still be there, which wasn't a bad place. It was just not a place of fulfillment. I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I was annoyed. And when I hit that anger button and I heard other people doing really great things and being successful during the Great Recession, and everyone's like, oh, you're lucky you have a job, but there's people out there making millions of dollars and making a difference. Why can't I be that person also? And I got angry. I think took action. So if you're out there, you're afraid, you're not alone. We've all been there. The only thing, the difference between a successful person and one that isn't successful yet is that we've done a few things. We've tweaked our lives a little bit. We've went out in there, sought mentorship. We sought a coach or whatever that may look like. And we've actually started to plan our lives and go out there and say, what do we want from our lives? Get clarity from our lives.
Oh, preach it. So, so important. And you have so much experience. I love that you are so generous and such a giver. Through the podcast, but not just through the podcast, but I mean, you guys offer so many different programs to help people along the way. And I didn't realize until we were talking before the recording that you actually also offer life coaching.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of the things that we do. I mean, my wife is a life coach. And the funny thing about life coaching, people look at it and go, life coaching, this foo-foo thing. But I'm here to tell you, when I started the life coaching program, it was all about personal development for me. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was at that crossroads. Should I leave the restaurant? Should I not leave the restaurant? I didn't want to be a life coach, but there weren't many programs out there about personal development. I had read enough Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins. I knew all that stuff, Napoleon Hill. I knew all that. But then when I actually went to life coaching, the great thing about it is you learn some of these skills that you're never taught, like maybe listening to people. No one listens out there. That's an amazing skill. You learn how to ask empowering questions. Really, everyone thinks communication is all about talking. It's really about listening and about asking great questions. Why don't they teach us that in school? I guess I don't know, because they don't want you. They're not teaching leadership, right? Because leadership,
Right.
that's what it's all about. It's all about listening to the other side and coming to an agreement, or really just listening to what their side has to offer. Especially in real estate, when you're in real estate, you're in a negotiation. Everyone thinks they know what the other side wants. They want to lower, they want to, higher price. They want better term. How do you know unless you ask
Yes.
those questions? And that's what, I think life coaching taught me, that skill set. It taught me about clarity, reasons, reap rewards, as Jim Quick says. What are your reasons? Why are you doing it? Focus on what you want to do. That's important. And I know you want to touch on the limiting beliefs. And in life coaching school, we were taught energy blocks. And energy blocks are really super important because there are things that hold us back. It's a block in life, whether it's external or internal, and the majority of them are internal, are blocks internal. So the external ones would be the economy, the pandemic. Those are things you can't control, but 95% plus are internal. So I can start out with the lowest one. We call them the GALES at IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. The lowest one is the limiting belief, right? It's a belief you have, whether it's true or not, that's holding you back. And you had mentioned, one of my limiting beliefs about getting into multifamily real estate is it takes money to make money. Well, if I don't have money and I have that limiting belief, all of a sudden what happens? I'm not going to pick up the phone and call the broker. I'm not going to actually even think about doing multifamily. The biggest one, limiting belief story that, always resonates with me is what was it, Roger Bannister back in the 50s when he ran the 4-minute mile. The limiting belief back in the 50s was if you run anything less than a 4-minute mile, your heart's going to explode and you're going to die. Well, when Roger Bannister broke that limiting belief, all of a sudden multiple runners were running 4-minute miles, and now it's not even an afterthought. So when you have a limiting belief, it holds you back. But fortunately, when you crush that limiting belief, like I did, owner financing, didn't know that. Syndication, raising money, didn't know that. Once you shatter that belief, it's game over. You can actually cross that bridge and go into it. The next energy block is the interpretation. And this is a funny one. When we have a conversation here, I can interpret something differently than you can. I'll give you an
Yep.
example. My wife went to the beach about a year ago, and she's all excited. She texts me that, hey, Gino, what do you think about me going to life coaching school? Now, I don't have my phone anywhere near me. I didn't text her back. 30 seconds later, she didn't get the instant text, and she's saying to herself, he thinks I'm stupid. What a dumb idea. And I didn't even say anything. She's making that interpretation. So in life, those interpretations are really hard. For example, you call the broker doesn't call you back. Oh, why did he call me back? He doesn't like my offer. He thinks I'm dumb. No. Find out what that interpretation really means. That can hold you back. So for her, when she comes back home, she says, did you get my text? I'm like, no, I don't even know where my phone is. And she goes, oh, what do you think about me going to life coaching school? I'm like, Jewel, that would be awesome. I have a partner. We can start a podcast together. And then she's like, wow, if I had not ever told you that or said anything, I would not have gone to school. So for coaching school, so that interpretation is really important. The next one is the the assumption. When we assume things in life, and we make that assumption, it's really strong energy block. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say you go into business, you have a partner. That partnership goes south. All of a sudden, going forward, you're going to assume every partnership is going to be terrible. And I could have made that assumption. My first deal, I partnered up with not such a nice guy, as we'd like to say. But it wasn't his fault. I have to bear responsibility also, right? So my assumption being all partnerships are bad, I never would have met Jake, and I never would have had this amazing relationship with a partner. So in your life, take a look at your assumptions. Take a look at where you're assuming. Just because you had a bad relationship, you got divorced, that doesn't mean going forward it has to be that way. So assumptions are really powerful because there's something that they actually happened in your life. Whereas the limiting belief is just a belief, and assumption is actually something that's in your DNA, that's in your physiology. And the last one, real quick, is the gremlin, what they like to call the gremlins, which are like those little voices in your head. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, good enough. I'm too ugly, whatever. People think I'm crazy. Look at those gremlins. Look at those. I mean, those little voices in your head, they really hold you back. For me, when I was at the restaurant, I had that chef coat on. I'm like, who's going to partner up or invest with me? I'm a pizza guy. They want, how am I going to get into the multifamily space? And that's what coaching really helped me out with the gremlins. And for me, I just use that anger, and I want to prove to people that I'm good. So that's how I overcame my gremlins.
It's really interesting when you can actually harness, when you take the time, you gain some clarity, and
Mm-hmm.
you can harness all of those facets for good. You can use
Mm-hmm.
them to really propel a lot of good, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better word, in your
Mm-hmm.
life. And I've done the same thing where I've leveraged, and the more you do it, the more you rub and push against your fears, the more comfortable it becomes. Because I don't know what your experience has been, but my experience has been, usually when I push past my fears and I actually just jump in the water and I'm terrified to do it, it works out really, really well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified of starting a podcast, and now I get to share space with you, and you're
Mm-hmm.
someone who influenced me. How cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, on the other side of fear, there's a reward, and it's so often it's better than we expect.
So what the amazing thing about that is when I look at doing something new, I set the bar low. For instance, we're doing a Facebook challenge next week. I've never done one before. We started a Facebook group. I don't know how it's going to work. Whether we sell one educational product or 100, that's not the goal. The goal is to start it and to learn. And then as an entrepreneur, you get to pivot and see what worked and what didn't work. So I'm not attached to the goal or to the results. I'm trying to attach myself to the system or the process of enjoying what I'm doing and then achieving that goal. And, you start a podcast 5 years ago. I'm not worried about getting 10,000 downloads. I'm worried about just starting it and just getting better every week and learning the process. And in the meanwhile, on podcasts with different mentors, different, like you said, different people you're learning from, the relationships you're making. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, you've got over 2 million downloads and you've talked to so many people and you've, influenced so many people. That's what it's all about. But just starting small. I'll give you a quick example. I'm, been running for about 6 weeks now. When I first started jogging about 6 weeks ago, I needed to do it. I said, I'm getting older. I need to really get the cardio up. First time I jogged, 130 beats per minute. That's where my heart was. I went 2/10 of a mile. I look like such a moron running, I'm going to tell you, but I don't really care, right? You just start slow and you start small, and then you just gradually add. And you gradually add. And then 6 weeks later, you're running 2 miles, and it's like, wow, I can run 2 miles. Not a problem. I feel great. And that's how I think every endeavor in life should be. Just start small. Don't expect to conquer the world in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day. That's the reason why they say it. But if you have the vision and you have the goal and you have the reasons why you're doing it, which life coaching helps you out, then you can accomplish anything.
Oh, that's so true. I'm listening to a book. I don't know if you're familiar with John Acuff at
Mm-mm.
all. But this goes so in line. I highly recommend it. But it goes in line with what he's saying in his book, Finish. So he actually has a book called Start. He has a book called Finish. Both of
Mm-hmm.
them are really great books. I think they should be required reading for seniors in high school, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But he was talking about that, all of these beliefs that we have in our head about things. And then, like, when we're setting our goals, just cutting it in half. Even it's like, why do
Mm-hmm.
we have to have, what's the point of the goal? If you want to lose 30 pounds, but you're discouraged because you only lost 15 or
Mm-hmm.
27, and then you quit, like, you still made success, you still made gains. So
Yes.
his recommendation was, cut your goals in half, make them smaller. You're not impressing anybody, get to where you want to go. That's the point of it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And one, even for me, Tony Robbins has been really clarifying to me what he says. It's not the point of achieving the goal. It's the point of the person you become to achieve that goal. So I think, it took me years and years and years, because at the restaurant, I'd get one goal, I'd buy one deal. I'm not happy. I'd buy the next deal. I'm not happy. I'd buy the fifth deal. Why am I not fulfilled? Right. And I always thought to myself, it's just hitting that goal, but what's left after that goal? Because we're super achievers, aren't we? We want to get to the next goal and we're not enjoying the process. So for me, becoming that person that I need to become, whether it's a better podcaster, whether it's a better public speaker, whether it's being a better parent, being a better entrepreneur, whatever that is, growing into that person, I think is what we should focus on. Not just the idea of losing 30 pounds or the idea of running 3 miles, but hey, reward yourself. And we don't reward ourselves enough because that's taboo. We can't pat ourselves on the back because, oh, you can't do that.
Right.
Accountability is really important in my life. I have a great spouse. My wife is amazing. I share a lot of stuff with her. And we have the Jake and Gino community. Like you said, I have Josh. We have weekly huddles. We have daily huddles in the morning. So we're always sharing wins. We're always sharing successes. And that's important because that gives you the fuel for the fire. Because if you're all by yourself on an island, especially now, you're not sharing with anybody. It's hard to stay locked in and it's hard to continue to progress and to set goals. So for me, the accountability piece is huge.
And the other component to that is those goals. When you have clarity in your goals and where you want to go, you can celebrate. I'm a huge believer in celebrating the little successes along the way.
Yep.
And people, you don't have to get to the finish line in order to have your celebration. You can celebrate at the little mile markers along the way. So I would like total example right here. When I saw that you were going to be on my podcast, when that showed up on my calendar, I just had an internal, so I was like, I just celebrated. I went to my husband. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, and I'm going to tell him, the impression that he's already had on my life. Like, that's so cool. But taking those little tiny celebrations along the way, and whatever happens, they might not conclude the way we want, but just celebrate that moment.
I agree, and that'll give you the fuel to do the next little goal or do the next little step, right? Next little follow up, and that's important because a lot of us are just programmed to do, and at the end of the day, we've accomplished so much. But accomplishing something is just all right. I've hit something. I think success is a feeling. When you feel like you've done something really good, that's what's great in life because that feeling of success will help you set your goals and get clarity on what you want to end up ultimately doing.
That is so true. Golly, this is so cool. So cool. I want to take this another direction. And I'm thinking all of the experience that you've had with your own investing, with your podcast, with all the education that you provide to out there, you've interacted with so many different people and had your own experiences. So you're like this huge wealth of knowledge. And I'm wondering if you could draw upon that to talk about some of the primary limiting beliefs that investors have. And we could go with active investors or passive investors.
I would challenge everyone listening to read the book by T. Harv Eker, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. I mean, I love that book back in 2008, like I referenced before. It was my pandemic. I was blaming everybody else and it's not fair. And, the taxes are too high and the economy stinks. It's all about personal responsibility. I think one of the limiting beliefs for me as an investor, and it's one of those where you either pay to play or you seek to serve. A lot of us look as an entrepreneurs, right? We're like, oh, how much is it going to cost? But as a true entrepreneur, I look at education as an investment. I mean, Jake and I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last 2 years being coached on how to scale up a business, being coached on how to do Facebook ads. This is stuff that I wasn't born with. I didn't learn how to do this. I can take 10 years to do it, or I can take 10 months to do it and pay someone to help me to do that. That's one. I don't know if that's an assumption or a limiting belief, but that's a strong one that a lot of us have. We look at that kind of stuff as a cost. Whereas if you're an entrepreneur or an investor, that's an investment in yourself. You will never lose that. You will always have that. Now I know how to scale a business. I know what a cadence of accountability is. I know what level 10 meetings are. I know how to hold them. I know how to create core values for myself and a mission statement for the company. That stuff, if I had my limiting beliefs 10 years ago, I'd be like, I can't spend that kind of money. I don't have that kind of money in education. So that's one of the limiting beliefs that I see. I think another limiting belief is just getting into an asset space or an asset class and not understanding the risks. When you get in, there's a lot of work involved. I mean, don't think you're going to know this tomorrow. We go to college for 4 years. We send our kids to school for 4 years. And then to become a teacher, they've got to go another 2. And then if you want to get a doctor, it's like, so if you can't spend 12 months of your life to learn how to invest in real estate or whatever, it's not a long time, especially if you're doing an hour or 2 a day. And I guarantee you, if you do an hour or 2 a day, I mean, you can read a 1 to 2 books a week on average, and then you read 50 books at the end of the year. You'll have enough knowledge to be able to invest in real estate. It's all about the long game. I think another limiting belief, I can keep going on, but one of the big ones is, as entrepreneurs, it's all about the long game. As a W-2 or just a regular 9 to 5, or like I was with a small business, it's the short game, right? We're thinking about transactions and we're thinking about getting paid, right? But as an entrepreneur, it's like the farmer. You have to plant the seed and you have to water the seed and grow it and hope that, hail doesn't come and destroy it. Hope that there's no droughts. And it's a long game. You're investing for the long term. The limiting belief is, I can't do that. I need to get paid today. Like you see, like we're doing right now. We're on podcasts. We're writing blogs. We're investing our time now hopefully for a future payout. So, I mean, that's a really big limiting belief. When I started out, Jake and Gino, like, how am I going to monetize this? I said, don't worry about making money, not making money, just providing a ton of value. And sooner or later, someone's going to hear you. They're going to like you. Then they're going to refer you. Then their friend's going to refer their friend, and it's going to grow organically. But for me, limiting belief in the beginning is like, I don't even know how to do this. I think transactions day to day is so much less riskier, when in reality, the risk is having a small business in New York right now, if I still had it, where there was a pandemic and there's a shutdown. So looking back at what could have been and not taking action 5 or 6 years ago to where I am right now, I'm really blessed. But at the same time, if I had been stuck in that old mindset of like, I've got it comfortable, my mom would always tell me, why do you want to do this? You've got a nice little business. Everyone else out there hates their job. You've got this nice little secure. And I'm like, Mom, you don't see the tea leaves. You don't see that everyone's delivering food. I mean, people, there's Panera. There's so many different, Uber Eats and so many delivery services that you don't see the future. So for me as an entrepreneur, being able to see that and stepping out of it and saying, I've got to think of the long term. I've got to think of an asset class that I want to invest in, where there's so many different benefits. That to me was huge.
That is absolutely huge. I want to go back to what you were saying at the beginning, when you were talking about people. It was like you said so many amazing things that totally resonate with me, and there was one of the concepts that they're just all so good. I believe so much in mindset and crushing limiting beliefs. I don't like being trapped by them, that it's now I've gotten to the point in my life where if I hunt them down. I want to destroy them because there's so many exciting things on the other side of those limiting beliefs. But so many people are trapped by them. I want to go back to that educational component and the value of paying. So often people have this belief that I can just YouTube it. It's okay. I can do it on my own. I can YouTube it. And they think that there's glory, or it's better for them to go it alone and to pour into, learning it the hard way. Like, it has to be difficult in order for me. And I have to do it on my own. I have to DIY everything. It's cheating if I go ahead and pay you for coaching.
Well, listen, Julie, that's a great point. I mean, in school, cheating on a test is not allowed, but in business, cheating is asking somebody else for help and working together as a team. So you can see the polar opposites, right? That's what we're taught in school, not to do that. But in the business world, we want to shorten our learning curve. We want to work together and create and solve the problem. For me, I think what I learned was, when I was giving people free advice, it was free. They didn't take it. They didn't really respect it. But as soon as somebody puts skin in the game, whether they're investing in an asset, whether they're investing in their education, all of a sudden they start listening. And you know what? 2 weeks from now, Julie and Gino are going to have a call. And guess what? Julie's got a lot of homework. And is Julie going to call the 6 brokers? Is she going to put in that LOI? Is she going to do all the training videos she needs to do? If Julie's all by herself, or she's just not really paying, it doesn't really cost anything, she probably won't do it. But you know what? Julie's not going to let Gino down. In 2 weeks, Julie's going to have all that work done, and she's going to report back. And I'm not a psychologist. I have no idea why, but Julie will do more for Gino than Julie will do for herself. It's a crazy thing. And, for me, it's very simple. When I partnered with Jake back in 2011, I didn't want to let him down. He didn't want to let me down. And it just continued to perpetuate and perpetuate and perpetuate. And I always look at it this way. I am putting food on his kid's table, and he's putting food on my kid's table. So when he says to Gino, it's 6:00 on Friday, we need to sign this and send this out, I don't even question it, because I know he's done it and he's there to do it. So that accountability piece is huge, but also having skin in the game. It's like when you're putting an investment, I don't want to invest with anybody that doesn't have some kind of skin in the game, whether they're signing on the note for the guarantor to guarantee guarantee a loan, or they're bringing in some capital, or they're bringing in that money for the down payment, whatever that may be. I've learned my lesson, because you know what? They can just walk away and there's no recourse. And it's the same thing with advice. Advice is free. Stuff on YouTube is great. It's not vetted out, and there's nothing wrong with getting advice or getting help from somebody else. I just had a podcast with a gentleman named Rick Sapio. I mean, he's a super, super successful dude. And he talked about finding a mentor and getting on board and learning from other people that have done it before. That's people who are so successful want to help others. They end up having the go-giver mentality, and we're all out there trying to help others. When you get to a point in your life, you understand that there's not the scarcity mindset. There's the abundance mindset. And you're out there, you know what? Students, anyone asks me, if you teach people how to invest in real estate, are they going to steal deals from you? At this point, if they take a deal from me, it's not the end of the world. I've got more than enough to go around. But guess what? Sometimes they can't do the deal on their own. They go, Gino, I found this great deal. You want to partner? Fantastic. Let's partner together. So, and that's happened more than once on more than one occasion. And I just found a deal through the community. I sent it over to a student. That student's, just because he became part of the community, I sent him a deal. So that's how life works. If you have that abundance mindset where, oh, wow, there's so much opportunity out there. Let's figure out how we can all do better, because multifamily, at the end of the day, is a team sport. There's so many different facets to it. There's so many different roles and responsibilities that you can take over. So for us, I mean, just adopt that abundance mindset.
I love the abundance mindset. And that is a really unique element to this multifamily real estate niche, right? It's very unique. My husband is in residential real estate, and it's a very different mentality in residential. I grew up in residential. It's a different mentality in general. And I love the abundance. But it's also like, even on my podcast, it's a matter of, yes, promote you. At the end of every episode, it's a matter of, hey, if this guest, if Gino resonates with you, go check out. He might be the person, he might have an offering that matches you. Because, I know some people might say, oh, that's bad, you're promoting. Why not promote someone else? Because the shoe will fit the right people.
And I was just speaking to somebody today about residential real estate. I think one of the reasons why residential real estate is that way is it's a lower barrier to entry. Anyone can go out, get a residential license, and within 6 weeks, they're out selling homes. They have no training on sales. They don't know how to ask questions. It's all about commissions to them. There's nothing wrong with that. But multifamily, by nature, people are already overwhelmed. Commercial, 5+ units. They're already like, I can't do that, right? There's a higher barrier to entry. So most people don't even get into it, right? So I think there's a huge difference in discrepancy between that. And then once you start your investing in multifamily, you soon find out that even though you have a ton of money and you can refinance these properties, roll these properties, sooner or later, you will be running out of capital. And then, of course, on top of that, you're like, you know what? I don't only have to invest in these assets. I can start building other businesses. So you're actually bringing multiple layers on. And we can talk about multiple streams of revenue, whether it's our education company, whether it's our syndication company, whether it's our capital company. I can't do all this by myself. So that pie, even though I'm getting a little less of the pie, as I say, the pie becomes much bigger. So thinking about that, from the residential world, the super successful ones are really ones who think just like people in the multifamily and know that it's not just out, you're not buying a multifamily deal. You're actually becoming an entrepreneur and creating a business. And those of them who in the residential space who are successful look at that as, wow, I can buy some homes and sell some homes. I can flip a couple homes. I can do some private lending. I can connect with an insurance broker. I can create a little title company, whatever that may be. You still got to start out in the space, but then as you start getting more experience and you start thinking outside the box, that abundance mindset hopefully will take over. And you're like, wow, the sky's the limit. I can do so much here. Let me just start growing.
Okay, Gino, you have somebody. I have people in my life. I'm gonna say free advice for these people, because this is a stereotype that's out there. It's a duplicity. I think that would be the appropriate word for it. Those people that they know what they want, or maybe they don't even know what they want, but they don't take that first step. They're so terrified. They know the next step to their dream, or I'm sorry, they know what their dream is, but they don't know how to take that first step. Because for some people, starting is the most difficult first step to take. What would you say? What's the push for those people?
So back in 2010, I wanted to write a cookbook, and I didn't know where to start. I'm a smart person. How do I write a cookbook? I actually hired a life coach who helped me out with that. And you know what he said? How many pages is your cookbook going to be? I said, 200, 250 pages. He said, well, if you write 1 page a day for the next year, you're going to have more than enough done, right? And I sat there and I never thought about that, right? Because I was caught up in my own world. I was always working, in the business, not on the business. And I step back, I'm like, wow, I can do 1 page a day. So for me, if you're really stuck, you know what you want, but you don't know how to take that next step, go out and find someone who can coach you, who can help you out. They're not going to give you the answers, Julie. You know that you have the answers within you. That's what coaching is all
Yes.
about. You have the answers. I, as the coach, or anyone as the coach, is going to ask you those right questions, and I'm going to pull out those answers with you. I'm going to raise your level of energy. You're going to get all jacked up, and then all of a sudden you're like, yes, how do I start? Well, Gino, you need to write 1 page a day. How does that look? Okay, I've got to write the recipes, and then I've got to go in, take pictures of the food, and how does that work? And from there, you start creating a plan, and then all of a sudden you start documenting stuff and start putting stuff on paper, and it becomes a reality. And when I went to coaching school, figuring out what your big why was is important. Why do you want to take that step? Why do you want to write a cookbook? For me, is I just wanted to write a cookbook for some, Catholic brothers and priests that just had postulants. When they would come every year, they'd get these new young postulants coming in. They didn't know how to cook. So I'm like, I'll write a few pages down and document it. And then my wife was like, why don't we just write a cookbook? And when she said that, I'm like, how do I do that? I was panic stricken on how to do that. But that's what I do with everything right now. I'll just stop, think about it. Then we'll have quarterly priorities. We'll write down our priorities. And then from there, just reverse engineer things. And I'm not afraid of doing anything anymore. But in the very beginning, having that coach or that accountability person, or having Jake saying, you know what, we can do this. Let's call the broker up and we can figure it out. That was a big help for me.
That's huge. The accountability component is
Mm-hmm.
ginormous. At the beginning of COVID, I launched an accountability group, and I limited it to just 6 people because I wanted to actually have relationships with the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never done anything of that nature at that point. And just by nature, it kept all of us accountable during the long part of the shutdown, and it allowed us to stay focused. We weren't distracted by everything going on that could have really dragged us down. It allowed us to say, hey, what's your goal? How do we support you?
Mm-hmm.
What's your goal? Just like you said. And what the heck? People are so much more inclined to work harder. I'm more inclined to work harder. I'm working on a project the 3rd time with a business partner, because I know that I'll work harder on that project, and I want it to be the very best. So we always say around our house, you can be boss of yourself, or you can have someone boss you around, and sometimes leveraging that, so I'm leveraging it. I'm being my own boss, but I know I have this outside accountability to have this, quality product to offer. So
that's awesome.
I love that about accountability. What would you like? I know that you have so much that you could share. What would you share on accountability? How should someone get started with that? I've never been held accountable before. I don't know who to ask. There's a lot around that.
There is. I mean, for me, I know what I wanted. I wanted to learn all about multifamily real estate in the beginning of my journey. I actually started a Rich Dad, Poor Dad coaching program, which was okay back then. It wasn't bad. Then I went to another program, another mentor program. So if you're looking for an accountability, I would first say find like-minded people. If you want to get into real estate, go to a REIA meeting. Go listen to some Facebook groups online. Go to Bigger Pockets. All these different venues where you're going to find people who are in the space with you, and then go on and start vetting people as far as their experience, as far as what their goals are, because your goals have to align with the person who's being held accountable with. Because for Jake, I met him through my brother. He was my brother's friend at the restaurant. He was a pharmaceutical rep getting catering out of my restaurant. Then when I found out why he's moving to Knoxville, which is a great market to invest in, he wants to buy multifamily. He wants to quit his job. That all really aligned. I love this hard work ethic. His whole morals, his ethics, everything about him I liked. So I resonated really well with him, but our goals were all in alignment. So I said, no shiny object. So let's try this. And then that's how I started with him. And for me, that was important because, when you're working at the restaurant, you're working 60 hours a week, it's hard sometimes to schedule a podcast recording, and it's hard to underwrite deals, and it's hard to call brokers. But if Jake's doing it, and I can't let him down, I've got to pull my weight also. So that really worked for me.
That's so true. And, for those of you listening that you don't have those type of people in your life, like for me, I live in a rural community. There are 2,500 people in my little town that I live in. And you don't have to use that as an excuse. So getting networked outside of your community, especially in this era where we have all this technology, you can still find like-minded people if you want to learn about multifamily. And, you know, going to Jake and Gino's website and learning about their coaching program, that opens doors. You end up meeting a whole new group of people that can help hold you accountable for that investing process. But you can do that. You could repeat this with whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in life.
Yep.
Oh, truth. Gino, I am so grateful to have you on this show today. As we wrap up, are there any other, you've just laced this with so many awesome gems. I'm so grateful. Are there any other gems that you would like to offer the listeners?
Ooh, I mean, that could be a show in and of itself, I think.
Right?
But I think for me, ultimately, just find out, why you're doing something. Because for me, when I wanted to leave the restaurant, well, why am I leaving the restaurant? And focus on what it is you want to do. Everyone asks me, well, what are you going to do? I want to leave the restaurant, but that's not what I wanted to do. Ultimately, I wanted to become financially free. That was my goal. And financial freedom to me was not quitting and retiring. I came down to Florida. I thought I was going to retire and live on the beach, but that's not ultimately what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do is create Jake and Gino, continue to grow the brand, continue to grow our holdings, continue to have my family involved. My wife and I started a podcast. My kids are now investing in our deals. I'm teaching financial freedom. I've created a youth academy through Jake and Gino. So that's what ultimately I wanted to do. I didn't want to retire. I was still working just as hard as I was at the restaurant, but I'm working with who I want to, when I want to, where I want to, why I want to. I can jump on this podcast at 4:30 on Monday with you. Don't have any issues. When I was at the restaurant, I didn't have that. I think ultimately I wanted my autonomy, my time freedom, and some type of financial freedom, right? That's ultimately what I wanted. I think when everyone out there, figure it is what you want to do. And I guarantee you, if you work hard for the next 3 to 5 years, you will accomplish anything you want to if you put your mind to it. But you need to have a plan, and you need to really stay focused on it. And like I said, we keep saying that word accountability. You need to be held accountable to it, because there's a lot of times, and the reason why you need to know your why, there's a lot of times when, a tenant, a resident passes away in a unit. We just had a fire last week. A resident's, they're cooking crystal meth, catches on fire.
Isn't that what all the cool kids are doing?
Yeah. one of the residents passes away, and you've got it's another one of those. So if you're going to crumple at the first sign of, something bad happening, then it's going to be tough. But if you have a strong enough why, if you have a strong enough conviction, if you have a strong enough vision of why you're doing it, you'll figure out that situation. And when it happens the next time, it's not that big of a deal. So figuring out your why will tell you how to do it ultimately.
Oh, you're just like speaking so much truth. Gino, how would you like people, there are lots of ways to get in contact with you, but what would be the primary way you'd say, listeners, if you want to reach out to me and learn more, go here?
Just go to jakeandgino.com. Our website's got all our podcasts on there. It's got our blogs on there. We've got a ton of information. And if anybody wants to receive a copy of the Honeybee, a PDF copy, just email me, gino@jakeandgino.com, and I'll send out a PDF copy to you. It's a great book. It's a parable. It's an easy read. If you already have a business or you're thinking about getting into business, just the possibilities of, wow, how can I scale a business? How can I create multiple streams of revenue? It's all in the book.
Fantastic. And I will say, listeners, you will not be disappointed. If you're not already listening to Wheelbarrow Profits podcast, you need to head there. One of my favorite elements about your podcast is just how real it is. So that's something that I always love. You guys are just honest, a casual conversation with a ton of value, but there's no fluff in it at all. And you guys make me laugh, and I learn a whole bunch.
Sometimes it's not great because we're not the best marketers in the world, but we're just authentic. If we say something stupid, it's like, that's who we are. You know what I mean? And that's what I guess life is all about, just being transparent, right? And just being who you are. And I think if you learn who you are, it'll be so much easier. You'll have such a much better life. Trust me.
Oh, yes. I have a mindset podcast about that. Just be you. Everybody is created to be them. And if everyone was just them, maybe you'll appreciate this. I have this analogy in my mind of, do you remember Care Bears?
Yes.
Okay. So, there are all the Care Bears and they have their little circle on them, and it's like cheer bear, whatever bear. And I have this analogy in my mind about people actually we all have something in us, just like a Care Bear. And can we just radiate that out to the world, please?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Well,
it's something for you to give to the world.
yeah, but the problem is that some of us are so fearful that we're living that negative energy that we can't do that, right? That we're afraid, and it's like, well, can I do that, right? And that's where, to me, honestly, the coaching really helped me out. It doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter if you look foolish. Why are you doing this? So to me, getting those answers, you have the answers within you. You just need somebody to help you pull them out. And every couple of weeks, getting on those calls and just diving deeper and diving deeper. You need to do the work. There's a lot of work involved in this. That's the problem. People are afraid of doing the work sometimes, but I'll guarantee you, if you want to work on yourself, man, it's life lasting.
That word work has so many negative connotations, just like the word hard.
Yes.
And just reframing that in our minds and saying, wait, this work is not bad. This has good results to it. So really important thing. Thank you again, Gino, for your time and for joining us today.
Thanks, Julie. Take care, everybody.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, 3keysinvestments.com, to see if there's an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.